Okay, imagine this scenario. You have a really high-profile lawyer, someone in the news, serving as a U.S. attorney, a very powerful job.
Right.
And then a federal judge just comes out and rules that she's actually serving unlawfully.
It's quite something. Definitely not something you hear every day. It really highlights some deep friction points in the justice system.
Exactly, about power, appointments, who gets to decide.
And the integrity of those roles, absolutely.
And that's exactly what we're getting into today on the deep dive. We're looking at this very significant recent federal court decision. It's causing quite a stir.
We're using an Al Jazeera article as our main source here, titled, "Judge Rules Trump Lawyer Alina Haba is Unlawfully Serving as U.S. Attorney."
Right. So our mission today is to unpack this whole thing. It's complex. We want to understand these novel legal and personnel moves the judge mentioned.
And look at the bigger picture, too. Separation of powers, what this means for prosecutors needing to be impartial.
So by the end of this, you should have a really clear idea of how this decision happened and, crucially, why it matters so much to the whole justice system. Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the main event, the big news, dropped on August 21st, 2025. Federal District Judge Matthew Bran. He made the ruling.
Yes, and it was definitive. He ruled that Alina Haba was unlawfully appointed as the acting U.S. attorney for New Jersey.
And he wasn't exactly mincing words, was he?
Not at all. His language was very firm. He actually wrote, let me quote it directly, "Faced with the question of whether Ms. Habba is lawfully performing the functions and duties of the Office of the United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey, I conclude that she is not."
Wow.
Yeah.
Just flat out, she is not.
Pretty unambiguous. It's a direct challenge to her authority in that job.
And the immediate consequence. I mean, this sounds huge.
It is potentially huge. Judge Bran said that because she hasn't been confirmed by the Senate, any actions she's taken since July 1st, 2025 may be declared void.
Void. So, wait, that could affect, what, cases? Decisions?
Potentially, yes. Legal actions, rulings, maybe even parts of criminal cases she was involved in prosecuting during that time. It casts a real shadow.
But there's a twist, right? He put the decision on hold.
That's right. He stayed his own decision, basically pausing its immediate effect, because an appeal from the Trump administration is, well, expected, highly likely.
So what does that mean, practically? Everything just hangs in the balance?
Essentially, yes. Those cases, those actions, they're in a kind of legal limbo now, waiting to see what happens with the appeal. It creates a lot of uncertainty.
And you know, that limbo really highlights why this isn't just some dry legal argument.
Exactly.
It shows how these power struggles, these questions about who followed the rules, can directly impact real people and real cases.
Yeah.
It makes you ask if the established checks are working.
It really puts the spotlight on the process.
Okay, so let's talk about that process and these novel legal moves Judge Bran mentioned. How is a U.S. attorney normally appointed?
Well, the standard procedure is pretty clear. The president nominates someone, and then the Senate needs to confirm them. That's the main path.
And interim appointments, like Habba's initial role.
Those are meant to be temporary fixes. There's usually a time limit, typically 120 days under the Federal Vacancies Reform Act.
Okay, 120 days. That seems like a key detail here.
It is. It's meant to ensure the executive branch doesn't just install someone indefinitely without that Senate oversight. It's a check, part of the separation of powers.
But things went differently here,
Yeah.
especially around July.
Very differently. On July 22nd, a panel of federal judges in New Jersey actually stepped in. They looked at Habba's situation, her interim term ending, and they declined her bid to stay on.
Okay, so the judges acted.
Yes. Following procedure, they named her second in command to take over. That was Desiree Grace, a career prosecutor.
So that sounds like the system working as intended. Judges follow the rule, appoint the next in line.
It seemed that way. But the administration's response was immediate and pretty forceful.
What did they do?
Attorney General Pam Bondi rejected the judge's decision outright. She fired Desiree Grace.
Fired the person the judges just appointed.
Correct. And then Bondi publicly stated Habba would stay in the job regardless of that court order from the judges.
And wasn't there that social media post too?
Yes, that drew a lot of attention. Bondi wrote online, "This Department of Justice does not tolerate rogue judges."
Rogue judges. Strong language.
Very strong. And it's this whole sequence, the judges trying to enforce the time limit, the administration firing their choice, the public defiance that led Judge Bran to say the administration used a novel series of legal and personnel moves to keep Habba there.
Essentially finding a way around the normal confirmation process.
That's what Judge Bran concluded, yes.
Hmm.
Circumventing the established, congressionally mandated process.
So who actually brought this challenge to Judge Bran? Was it the judges again?
No, this time the challenge came directly from defendants in cases Habba's office was prosecuting.
Ah, so people directly affected by her authority.
Exactly. The article mentions Julian Giraud Jr. and Julian Giraud III. They were facing drug and firearm charges. And also Cesar Humberto Pina.
What was Pina accused of?
Laundering drug money and running a pretty large Ponzi-like investment scheme, apparently involving millions.
And their lawyers spoke out after Bran's ruling.
Yes, Pina's lawyers, Abby David Lowell and Gerald Croverton, put out a statement praising the decision. They said something quite powerful.
What was that?
They said, prosecutors wield enormous power, and with that comes the responsibility to ensure they are qualified and properly appointed. And then they added, this administration cannot circumvent the congressionally mandated process for confirming U.S. attorney appointments.
That really cuts to the heart of it, doesn't it? The legitimacy of the prosecutor.
It does, because if the person leading the prosecution isn't legally supposed to be in that role, it calls the whole case into question. It's fundamental to due process.
So this isn't just some abstract procedural fight.
Not at all. It's about whether the rules are being followed for appointments that carry immense power over people's lives. And taking shortcuts, well, it shakes public trust. It makes you question if justice is really being served impartially.
Okay, let's maybe zoom out a little now. This ruling didn't happen in a vacuum, right? There's a broader context here.
Absolutely. President Trump has had a history of, let's say, power clashes with the judiciary. He's often accused judges of political bias, especially when rulings go against him or his allies.
And this specific issue, keeping interim U.S. attorneys beyond their term limits, is this just happening in New Jersey?
Well, the Al Jazeera article notes that the Justice Department under Trump has reportedly tried to do similar things elsewhere, trying to keep term-capped interim U.S. attorneys in place.
So it suggests maybe a pattern, or at least a strategy.
It certainly raises that question. Is this a broader effort to keep certain individuals in key roles without going through the Senate confirmation hurdle?
And Habba herself, her appointment and actions have drawn, as the article puts it, particular scrutiny. Why is that?
Several reasons. First, her very close ties to President Trump. She wasn't just appointed U.S. attorney. She was an early pick for his second term, brought into the White House as a counselor.
And she was his personal lawyer before that, right?
Yes, she represented him personally in several civil cases.
How did those cases go?
It's a bit mixed. She won a defamation suit for him, the one brought by Summer Zervos, but she lost two really high-profile ones. The E. Jean Carroll defamation case and the New York Attorney General Letitia James's civil fraud case.
Right, and both of those are currently being appealed. So you have someone going from being the president's personal lawyer with that kind of track record directly into this powerful, supposedly nonpartisan prosecutorial role.
That proximity alone would raise questions, I suppose.
It inherently invites questions about impartiality, yes.
Yeah.
And about the motivations for the appointment itself.
And then there were her own public statements.
Ah, yes. That added another layer. She apparently told a podcaster she hoped to help turn New Jersey red.
Turn the state Republican, while serving as U.S. attorney. That's how critics interpreted it. They argue that statement shows she might be willing to use her office, which should be nonpartisan, for political goals. That's a fundamental clash with the role's expectations.
You can see why that would cause concern. A U.S. attorney is meant to enforce laws fairly, not pursue a political agenda for their district.
Exactly. And those concerns seem to crystallize around some specific investigations her office pursued.
Like what?
Well, there was an investigation into New Jersey's Democratic governor, Phil Murphy, focused on his immigration policies.
Okay, investigating the governor of the opposing party.
And then there was the incident involving Newark Mayor Ross Baraka. He was charged with trespassing.
Trespassing? What happened there?
He tried to join some members of Congress on a tour of an immigration detention facility, Delaney Hall, and her office charged him.
What came of those charges?
They were eventually dropped, and interestingly, a judge, Andre Espinosa, actually rebuked someone from Habba's office over it.
What did the judge say?
Judge Espinosa said pretty sharply, an arrest, particularly of a public figure, is not a preliminary investigative tool.
Basically saying you don't arrest someone just to investigate them, especially someone prominent.
Precisely. And Mayor Baraka didn't just let it go. He's now filed a civil lawsuit against Habba.
Suing her?
For what? Accusing her of false arrest and malicious prosecution related to that trespassing charge.
Wow. So that whole incident really blew up.
It did, and it feeds into this narrative of potential political motivation, especially given the charges were dropped and the judge's comments.
Is that the end of the fallout from that Delaney Hall incident?
Not quite. The article mentions Habba's office is still pursuing criminal assault charges against U.S. Representative LaMonica McIver related to that same event.
And what does McIver say about that?
She's called it a blatant political attack.
So you have investigations into the Democratic governor, charges against the Democratic mayor of Newark, later dropped with a judicial rebuke, and ongoing charges against a Democratic congresswoman.
Taken together, these examples really highlight that tension we talked about. Political appointments versus the need for nonpartisan law enforcement. When the person leading the prosecutor's office has strong political ties, made partisan statements, and their very appointment is legally questionable.
It makes these kinds of actions look, well, potentially suspect to critics.
And it undeniably damages public trust. People need to believe the justice system is fair, not a tool for political battles. These kinds of controversies really shake that foundation.
So bringing this all together then, this deep dive really seems to expose a major point of friction in our system.
It absolutely does. It's this fundamental clash, right, between the executive branch wanting to appoint its people and the judiciary trying to uphold the established rules and procedures.
All happening under this intense political spotlight.
Exactly. In this case, of the Habba ruling, it's more than just about one person or one job. It really forces us to look at how important those rules, those procedures actually are.
They're not just technicalities.
Not at all. They're structural supports for our whole democratic system. Separation of powers, checks and balances, they exist to prevent abuse and ensure fairness. This case shows what happens when those supports are tested.
Right. So here's something to think about as we wrap up. Judge Bran's ruling is on hold. As we said, it's going up on appeal.
The final chapter isn't written yet.
Exactly. So regardless of how that appeal turns out, whether Bran is upheld or overturned, what might be the lasting impact of this fight?
That's the big question.
Could it change the rules of the game for future presidential appointments? Could it redraw the lines around executive power in this area?
It might set precedents, certainly, about how far an administration can go in trying to bypass Senate confirmation for these key roles.
It may be more fundamentally, what does this whole episode ask you, the listener, to think about regarding the independence of our courts and our prosecutors, especially when the political pressure gets this intense?
How strong are those guardrails, really? It's a crucial question for the health of the justice system.
Definitely a lot to consider there. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Always interesting to unpack these things.
We'll see you next time.